Hello and welcome back to Bear TCG Plays. Today I want to be talking about RiftBound. It just came out recently. So the first thing I really want to go over is, generally speaking, what is the RiftBound League of Legends trading card game? It's a trading card game recently released by Riot. It uses League of Legends as the world and characters and kind of the basis of how they designed the game. If we scroll all the way down here, a bit too much, you can see some of the cards here. So you see Jinx, Victor, and Yasuo, as well as you can see Maokai here as well, and then you can see the Super Mega Death Rocket. What you're seeing here with specifically Jinx, Victor, and Yasuo is what's called the Legend card. You can see it says Legend right there. The Legend card is effectively, if you guys know Magic the Gathering, it's kind of similar to a Commander. This is a card that dictates exactly what is your deck that you're playing. You see that there's also colors here. It's actually also similar to One Piece. The difference here is that obviously you see no cost. Unlike Maokai or the Super Mega Death Rocket, there's no cost on these cards because you can't play them. They just stay in your Legend zone and they have abilities. Jinx says at the start of your beginning phase, you draw one if you have one or fewer cards in hand. Victor says tap and pay one, play a recruit, one might unit token. And Yasuo says two and tap and move a friendly unit to or from your base. So obviously then that's going to dictate your playstyle, what kind of things you're going to do. The other thing there is in the game there are champion units. So there is a couple Jinx units, there are Victor units, and there are Yasuo units. So you can start with them in your champion zone. So that means you have your legend, which has an ability that you always have access to, and then you have a champion unit that's going to be from your deck. Unlike Commander, once you cast your champion unit and then it gets removed in battle or by an effect or whatever, then it doesn't go back to your champion zone. It is just like that's it. As soon as you cast it from the champion zone, your champion zone is now going to stay empty for the rest of the game. But there is a chance later on that we get an effect that puts it back. But for now, there's no such thing. But what this means is that you always have access to that card. And then the other thing to note is this Super Mega Death Rocket over here. I'm not sure if you can see it, but it says Signature Spell Jinx. It's effectively the alt of Jinx, if we're talking about the game here. And only Jinx Legend can use this spell, and it can only be in a Jinx deck. So even if you get another deck that is also red-purple, for example, Annie is also red-purple, you can't use the Super Mega Death Rocket. You can't put it in the deck. Deck size is 40 cards, but obviously it's going to be 39 because you're going to take out one champion that matches the same name as your legend. So you're starting with a 39 card deck, and you have 3 copies maximum of each card. That's the general overall for the game. And then if we scroll up back up here, this is the first set. So you have, starter decks, booster boxes, and booster packs, but they also have this proving ground. This is actually what first interested me in the game. So it has Annie, Master Yi, Lux, and Garen, designed for either 2 to 4 players. And this is like the part where I was talking about. I was trying to be similar to Commander, where it can be in a 4-person pod. You could technically do more, obviously, as always, same as Commander, but it's designed for 4-person. That's what got me interested in the game. Plus the fact that I used to play League of Legends. However, can't find this anywhere for me. So just a quick tidbit: the game has gotten a lot of interest into it, and so there's a lot of hype. But that does mean that the cost of the cards is kind of expensive. Personally, what I ended up doing is because I want to play with Proving Grounds and I want to play it with friends. My initial plan was, as you already see with my channel, I'm getting into a lot of card games. I can't be on top of all of them. So instead, what I decided to do is for Riftbound, I'm just going to pick up the Proving Grounds. But I couldn't find it anywhere. So instead, I'm just going to proxy it. The idea is just for friends, just with me. I'm never going to be playing this and actually attempting to compete and go to tournaments. But since I was proxying it, and since I have friends who have fully built out decks, I decided to build a deck of my own. And that's what I want to get over today. If we switch over here, we have the deck I decided to build, which is Volibear, the Relentless Storm. I didn't build this idea from scratch. This is kind of a deck that already exists. There's different ways to play this legend, and you'll see once we get into it how I decided to build it. But it's not entirely original, but I did build it myself. So in this game, you see that you have legend, you have runes, and you have the battlefield. Let's just start with the legend first. So Volibear the Relentless Storm says when you play a mighty unit, you may exhaust me, which means tap, to channel one rune exhausted. And it then has the reminder text that a unit is mighty while it has 5 or higher might. That is what that symbol is. That symbol is might. So obviously you want a lot of big boys to play and then get rewarded for playing big boys and so on. And then there's what's called a rune deck. So this is similar to like your Dawn deck if you're thinking of One Piece, and if you're thinking of Magic, it's essentially like your land deck, but it's a separate deck. It's land cards don't go in your deck, and you get runes every turn channeled instead of having to play them from your hand. You have 12, and you can put them in any combination of the two colors. So there's a red orange deck, which means Fury body deck. I went with 7-5 just because I feel like there's more cards in my deck that are red, but you could probably do a 6-6. And then you have battlefields. So the way battlefields work, let me hover over one as an example, is this is what you have to conquer to gain points. So when you conquer, meaning once you move a unit in here and either there is no enemy units or there are enemy units and then you defeat them in a combat, you conquer the battlefield. When you conquer a battlefield, you gain a point. Alternatively, when your turn starts and you have a unit that is on a battlefield, basically think of like your quote unquote upkeep step if you're thinking of Magic. If you have a unit on a battlefield, you gain a point for holding. And game ends when you get 8 points. However, you cannot get that 8th point unless you are holding or if you conquer all the battlefields. When a game starts, you pick one of your 3 battlefields. The game is a best of 3. And you put it out. Your opponent will also have a battlefield out. So in a 1v1 match, there will be 2 battlefields to conquer and or hold. And so you always want to have effects that are useful to you. Because this is a slower deck, you want mighty units and you want to channel a lot. You're going to take your while getting to that point, so you want to delay the game. So that's why it increases the point needed to win by 1. The other battlefields here are the Obelisk of Power, which is at the start of the player's first beginning phase. That player channels 1 rune. That's because we want to get to the late game faster. So essentially just channel an extra rune at the beginning. Pretty straightforward. And then the Sigil of the Storm is when you conquer here, you recycle one of your runes. Now you're going to see the word recycle come up a lot. What recycle means is you take whatever that card is and you put it at the bottom of the deck. So here it says you recycle a rune. So that means when you conquer here, you need to de-ramp yourself. You take one rune that was already out on the board and you put it at the bottom deck. That will also slow down your opponents. And since this deck specifically isn't going to be really conquering until I'm already set up, because I'm not really going to have that many units until I'm already set up, I don't mind recycling my runes, but it'll just slow down my opponent. So then going on to the spells, we see a lot of spells here. This is a one-of. It just prevents all spell and ability damage this turn. But I want to also mention this little symbol here under the 1. This means that you have to recycle a rune of that color, so a body rune. So I pay 1, that could be with any cost. All the paying costs are any color, which is why it's a 7-5, just because, as you can see over here in my spells, there's a lot more red, what's called a power cost. That's what this color is. It just prevents all spell and ability damage, but by the time I want to play this out, again, my units are higher cost stuff, so I'm gonna have the body rune out by that point. Sabotage. This is maybe one of the reasons why you go to a 6-6 or maybe even a 5/7, flipping the thing. Just because this is what you want to do early a lot, which is you choose an opponent, they reveal their hand, you trash a, you don't trash, sorry, you recycle a non-unit card from it. So you just get rid of resources from your opponent's hand. Get excited, you discard one card, deals its energy cost as damage to a unit of the battlefield. And since we're playing big boys, they have big energy costs. Then we have Falling Star, which is 2, but it has a double Fury cost. We do it twice, deal 3 to a unit, so we can either destroy 2 3 might or lower, or we can destroy 1 6 might or lower. So you see these two are 2 and a 3 of, which is why I chose to go higher on the Fury. We have Confront. This is, again, the idea is you use this late game, you pay 2 units you play this turn, enter ready, and you draw 1. You have Mobilize, I channel a Rune Exhausted, so this is just ramp, and then if I can't, I draw 1, so I can use it to draw. Disintegrate, there's 2 of these, it has no power cost. Deal 3 to a unit at a battlefield. If it kills that unit, draw 1. Catalyst of Aeons, I channel 2. If I couldn't channel 2 runes, I draw 1. That means if I could channel 1, I still draw 1. This is Volibear's ult, which is the Stormbringer. I could play it at 3, but I figured it's not necessary at 3. I might even cut it down to 1, we'll see. But I choose a friendly unit in my base, so that means not in a battlefield, and I deal damage equal to its might to all enemy units at a battlefield. And then I move my unit there. So even if that unit is already tapped. Sky Splitter here, its energy cost is reduced by the highest might. So if you have an 8 might creature, it is free, and it deals 5 to a unit at a battlefield. Another thing I want to mention here is you see this one has action, which says, the reminder text says, play on your turn or in showdowns. Showdown is when there's a battle between you and an opponent. And then there's reaction, which you could play at any time, even before spells and abilities resolve. And now we're onto our units. Stormclaw Ursine is the weakest thing. It's still a mighty unit. When you play me, you channel a rune Exhausted. We have Deadbloom Predator. So this has Deflect, which is essentially ward, but the ward is, the symbol is a power cost. And so in order for your opponent to target it, they need to deramp themselves. And it also says that you can play it immediately to an occupied enemy battlefield. The reason it says that, and the reason that's important, is because any unit you play comes in exhausted, meaning tapped. And in order to move a unit from your base to a battlefield, you need to exhaust it, meaning it needs to be untapped, and then you tap it to move it to a battlefield. And you cannot go from one battlefield to another battlefield unless you specifically have a keyword called ganking. So that's important to know. And you can go from a battlefield back to your base if you want to protect the card. However, for this card, you can just straight up play it into an occupied enemy battlefield. And then we have Cadrigan, the Infernal. When you play me, you draw 1 for each mighty unit. So if you have, even if you have no other mighty unit, he is a mighty unit himself. So you do a minimum draw 1, but you could draw a lot more. And then you have one of the champion units, which is the 10 cost Volibear. Deflect 2, so they have to recycle 2 in order to target him. And then when he attacks, he deals 5 damage split among any number of enemy units. Here, attacking is when you start that showdown. So when you go into a battlefield that is occupied by your opponent, that happens before the actual showdown. So you just deal 5 damage. So you can pop some small stuff so he takes even less damage, even more guaranteed to win. And then Volibear Imposing has Shield 3, and I forgot to mention it with the Stormclaw Ursine, but it has Tank, which means it needs to be assigned combat damage first. And this is the biggest unit there is. It's kind of why I wanted to play it, just for the fun. And it also says when an opponent moves to a battlefield other than mine, draw 1. So not only do you have a big threat, if they move to the other battlefield, you get to draw. So you're punishing them for that. And then you're like, damn, how are you going to play all those cards? They're so costly. You're basically out of the game until turn like 4, not doing anything. Well, we have Dazzling Aurora. That's what the whole deck is built around. And as a caveat, Volibear is not the only legend that can play this. There's a lot of different decks that uses Dazzling Aurora, where it says at the end of your turn, you reveal cards from the top of your main deck until you reveal a unit. You play it ignoring its cost, so which means ignoring power costs as well, and then you recycle the rest, so you put all the rest back at the bottom of the deck. This means two things. First of all, you get to know basically what all your draws are coming up if you've gone through your deck enough. But also, you don't need to be paying 12, 10, 9, 8, or even 7. I like the Stormclaw Sign because it channels a Rune Exhausted, and then because of the Legends effect, which is when you play a unit, you may channel a Rune Exhausted, you channel another Rune Exhausted. So at 7, you could play it out, channel 2 Runes Exhausted, so that next turn you can have bigger play. You can play out your Dazzling Aurora for 9, but you'll still have 2 for any of your responses, which I think is important. And that's my opinion on how to play this deck. I do like this deck. It's kind of funny. It's not currently the meta deck, but it's still fun regardless. Speaking of, you can ignore these prices because these are the alt art runes, just because I like the way they look. I'm not actually running them, but you're saying that like generally speaking the costs are low. So what am I talking about? Uh, like it being expensive until you get down here. This is a regular art. This is not an alt art. But it's this is required in every deck that plays Dazzling Aurora, and you can see this Dazzling Aurora as well. Really, this is where the craziness happens. Like just with the Deadloom Predator and the Dazzling Aurora alone, each at a playset, you're looking at $505 approximately, right? And this is USD. This is not okay, right? It's not okay to be paying half a grand for 6 cards total. So that is why, like I mentioned before, I'm currently just going to be proxying, playing the game with friends casually. I'm not interested in going game too hard, but just playing the game for fun. For context, the most expensive deck right now is actually Kaisa, and that is like the meta deck, and that deck is like 650 plus to build that whole deck. Crazy stuff. Obviously, these are, the most expensive 2 cards. The other cards are like this one, Kedrine is like barely over 15. Other than that, it's stuff that are barely at or around 10, and then commons and commons are dirt cheap, but still 505 for 6 cards out of your 40, like that's that's not okay. So I personally would not recommend getting into this game in terms of getting real cards unless you want to main this game and you have that kind of money to spend. But two things. First of all, there are reprints that are going to be happening. So just wait for the reprints. And if you're just going to be playing casually with friends, just proxy. Honestly, it's not worth it right now. Wait until the game gets cheaper. I'm sure you all remember back when One Piece first came out, when Digimon first came out, even Gundam a little, though Gundam was better because people went crazy over the beta boxes. But it's basically effectively, in my opinion, from my own perspective, trying to play this game at the maximum level, like being actually like, oh, I'm gonna build a full competitive viable deck. Doing that is a bit crazy. You can play this game at cheaper because, especially now, we have had the starter decks all reprinted. So that's nice. But then also, just to note, this Proving Grounds, it MSRPs for 60 Canadian, and then I couldn't find it for less than 120 Canadian, and I didn't want to pay double for it, which is why I proxied it. Now looking at online and eBay, it's going for like 150, and that's because people realize cards like Falling Star or Disintegrate, uh, they're only available in that Proving Grounds. There's also a card called Incinerate, which I chose not to play. They're only available in that Proving Grounds. These legends at the start were also only available in the Proving Grounds, but they did make them available elsewhere as well. They're going to make them available in store tournament promos just to get people to actually be able to play the game. So I say, if you're interested in this game, proxy it if all you're doing is playing with friends. If you do want to play it locals, start with a starter deck. Don't go crazy buying all the stuff. That's my personal perspective. The game will get cheaper. They will print more. And the main thing to note here is that right now, like I mentioned, Kaisa is the top meta deck, like arguably better than everything else. Other than Kaisa, there's a Master Yi deck, which is doing quite well. And then there's all these Dazzling Aurora decks, which also have a place in the meta, but it's not really as strong. It is equivalent, like I mentioned before, with early One Piece, where Zoro was basically the only viable deck if you're talking about actually competing, and Shanks prices were through the roof. There's no reason to get into all that hype and spend all that money for cards that we know, especially historically speaking, we have seen it ourselves drop down in price over time. And on top of that, because the game is early, game plans are very linear and the meta is very bland, generally speaking. So if you're asking for my opinion, I'd say proxy to play with friends and have fun, or buy a starter deck and play as much as you can on the cheap if you want the real cards until we get new sets. I mean, the new set is already announced and they're already doing reveals. Um, I probably won't get any proper real physical cards unless they print either of my boys, Udyr or Rengar, and I like that playstyle. But before that happens, I'm probably not going to be touching this game in terms of real cards, and I'm just going to be sticking with proxies and playing casually. But that's it for me regarding Riftbound. Let me know if you were one of the ones who did buy into the hype, if you regret it. What are your thoughts on the game? Are you interested in this game at all? Should I try to cover it more? I don't know. Let me know what your thoughts are, and I'll see you in the next video.